Thanks for tuning in today to Meet the Candidates 2018. Today our guest is Daniel Kemph, Democratic candidate for the 6th Congressional District of the United States House of Representatives. Thanks for joining us today. There are 435 member seats in the House of Representatives, and each district serves about 720,000 citizens. Kentucky has 6 House districts, and Frankfort and Franklin County sits at the westernmost portion of the 6th Congressional District. The district extends south to Richmond, includes Lexington, east to Flemingsburg, north to Georgetown, and into Robertson County. The primary election is Tuesday, May 22nd, and the winners of the Democratic and Republican primaries will face off in the general election on Tuesday, November 6th. Again, thanks for joining us today. Let's start with, who is Daniel Kemph and why is he running for U.S. Congress?
I'm just a hardworking guy. I moved to Lexington a couple years ago, and I just love the bluegrass. I love the people, and I felt as though, I've always been involved in politics, paying attention to what's going on, and this last election cycle, and numerous town halls that didn't actually take place. I didn't feel as though my voice or my values were being heard or being represented, and I've talked to a lot of people, and they all feel the same way, that their voices are not being heard or that their values don't actually have value to our representation. So I felt as though I had to do everything I could, and that means running.
Okay, thanks. So what do you see as some of the most important issues facing the 6th District at this time?
Well, the issues that face the 6th District are the same issues that face many Americans have to deal with, health care, the economy. It's not just a matter of raising the minimum wage, but actually the dignity of quality work, of making a contribution. And people need not necessarily help, but they need to know that they can grow into something, that they can create a world or create a life for themselves that's better for their children than it is for themselves.
Okay. Well, I'm going to hit on a few issues that are out there right now that we've all heard about, and I think it's important for our viewers to kind of understand where you stand on some of these issues. So, much has been written about in the last few decades about the lack of bipartisanship in Congress, and I'm kind of curious, what experience do you have that's prepared you to work in this politically divided Congress or this atmosphere?
My work, what I do, I consult on technology projects for large commercial banks. And my work is made up of large teams that are diverse in agendas. And so I believe that my ability to bridge that gap between the technology and the business people, and between project managers and the people actually executing tasks for the business, bridging that gap, threading that needle is a difficult task. But I've always felt very comfortable as that liaison. And I believe that I can help bring that type of approach to Congress to fully represent all the people of the 6th District. Because even if I win, right, even if I carry in November, there's still going to be tens of thousands of people that didn't vote for me. It's still my duty to represent everybody. Mm-hmm. And it's going to be the same duty in Congress to make sure everybody is fully represented.
Okay. A lot that we've seen in the news over the past few months, or actually few years, has to do with the availability of guns. And there's been quite a bit of talk on gun control and gun control measures. And where do you fall on what we should or should not do with guns, not only as as American citizens and having them individually, but also at the at the school or work and that kind of thing?
Well, let's be very clear on something. I have no interest in controlling anybody's gun. Mm-hmm. I have no interest in going to anybody's house and taking their gun away. Your gun is yours. The challenge is we have some 350 million guns in America and 1 trillion bullets. So that's not going to go away overnight. We have an issue, a challenge that Americans are facing that is generations in the making. So we need to move beyond just saying, oh, I support common sense gun solutions, because we've left common sense behind. We're not even in the realm of common sense anymore. How about we just have one basic thing that we can all do? The biggest challenge in gun policy is that every state has its own gun policy, and we need a unifying gun policy. We need just the basic minimums. How about a minimum gun purchase age of 21? Nothing wrong with that. If you're in the service, sure, you're in the service, you're surrounded by, others. When you have training, professional training, you genuinely sleep in the same room as your instructor for guns. So, but a minimum purchase age of 21, nothing unreasonable, does not get in the way of anybody's Second Amendment to own a gun. I would like to see a database. We live in the information age. There's nothing wrong with collecting a database of gunshot victims, where they were wounded on their body, what location, physical location they were at, the damage done, the type of gun used. These are all valid data points that we can be collecting so that we can come up with a gun policy that does show the way to the future. Right now, we have a woeful lack of knowledge and information on this subject to really do something about it that really helps Americans, because Americans, our society, we're really behind on where we want to go on this. And collectively, we all want to move forward together with this, and we're just not there. For whatever reason, it's very, very divisive, and it doesn't have to be.
Mm-hmm. Are there specific issues to the 6th District that you think are going to be most important to the constituents here? Things that you want to go to Washington and fight for?
Voter access. We need to make sure everybody's voice is heard, and your voice is heard by how you vote. So access to the polls, very broadly, very generously, give people the opportunity to vote. People's schedules are we have priorities. We have bills to pay and kids to feed, and so we need to make access to the polls a very high priority, so that all of the voices that need to speak out on issues, they have that chance to vote. Would be singular, first one.
How would you do that?
Well, we have laws, especially in the general election, where the election must be held on a Tuesday. Mm-hmm. There's nothing wrong with the weekend before having polls open. Nothing wrong with more broadly mail-in votes. So that people can vote at their convenience, because people generally make up their mind prior to actual election day. There's a few independents that really, really wait till the last day of election day, but there's no reason why we can't do some kind of early voting process. It doesn't affect the outcome, and it really is about people being heard.
What other do you have? I interrupted you. Did you have other items that are really important, you think, to the folks here in Central Kentucky?
Well, jobs. Jobs is everything. Not just Central Kentucky, but all of Kentucky. There's a challenge of jobs, but it's also, we're dangerously close to losing a generation of middle class. And there's no reason why we can't have a dynamic 21st century jobs program that does teach the skill sets of technical writers and business analysts and project managers. Applications, apps that appear on your phone don't just magically appear. They got to be tested. They got to be validated. They got to have technical writers, not just the code written through it. And all of these jobs, in my line of work, I have development teams in India. I have management teams in New York or down in Charlotte, and there's no reason why those jobs can't be here. And a high percentage of all the work that I do is done remotely. It's done from home. You don't have to actually be in an office, because the work matters. And there's no reason why we can't develop a program that develops that skill set to be here in the U.S. Americans are, they're intelligent, and they absorb information, and they're hard workers. We have to take better advantage of that.
And how exactly do you think we do that? How do you get those jobs? How do you get those kids trained, or those young people trained to be able to do that type of work?
Well, it's not just the kids. The kids are well aware of this. Mm-hmm. They're out in front of this. They're creating new media every day. But it's the It's the age group above that. It's the kids' parents. They need a retraining. They need to be introduced to these kinds of markets, to these kinds of opportunities. A lot of people just aren't aware that these kinds of opportunities are there. But again, this is the information age. This is about database and infrastructure and technology speaking, and using the technology solutions to their fullest. And this affects everything, because even like a small business, if you're running a horse farm or something, you have technology available to you, but maybe it doesn't exactly match your needs, so you need to develop it in a way that satisfies your needs. Well, you need a development team to do that. You need a project manager, you need an analyst for it, you need a technical writer to just include a new, action button on your application. And these are small businesses that we can, develop here in the Bluegrass. There is a lot of opportunity in fields like that. And like I said, this is the 21st century, and this is where we're going. This is where new jobs are.
Well, this sounds like I might be related, and I'm kind of curious what your feelings are. It seems that the transportation bill that the president has talked about since he ran for president is going to be kicked to 2019. And in that transportation bill, as least I've read about it, it's not just bridges and highways and that type of thing, but he's talking about a digital future in the transportation bill. We'll see whether it happens or not, I guess, when the time comes. But if you're sitting in Congress in 2019 and that bill comes around, what do you think about what that transportation bill looks like?
It is, you're right, it's going to be beyond just bridges and roads, which is absolutely necessary. We need to update in a desperate way, but this is not the solution for jobs, because once that roads is rebuilt or built, that job goes away. So then there's a whole infrastructure that goes with that, the material infrastructure that goes with that, all those jobs go away. So it's a finite, it's absolutely needed, and it would be great, and that's the kind of work that will help us move forward, that will help us in the job retraining. But it's also broadband access in our rural areas, that's just outside of the Fayette County, that we can really affect people's lives. The infrastructure isn't just a road. You're absolutely right on that. It goes far beyond that.
So do you think that that's something that the federal government should fund we'll stick with broadband for a little bit. Is that something that the federal government should be involved in? I mean, they are today. Or is that more of a state initiative? What do you think that's something?
But that also goes to the net neutrality question, right? The internet, technology, this is the new America. This is the America in the 21st century. This is the first time I've ever said this publicly, but I feel that we're getting very close to making internet access and broadband to be a public utility. It's as necessary as electricity and water inside our houses. It's the definition between haves and have-nots in a technology world. But this is where all our new entrepreneurs are going to come from. This is where all the new business is going to come from, because once they have this really powerful tool available to them, they're going to work to develop it. And so yes, the federal government does have a place in this, because now we need to move it out of the metropolitan areas. We need to move it out of Lexington and get it farther out. We need to get it out in the rural areas so that it has equal access for everybody. And that equality thing, I'm really big on that.
I appreciate the answer. I'm going to shift a gear on you to something completely different here. I know that a lot of our viewers out there today have seen in the news and maybe even have been affected by drug overdoses and the opioid scourge. It's just in America, but we hear a lot about it in central and eastern Kentucky today. What are your ideas on addressing this epidemic?
Well, first of all, bridging from what we just talked about, the economy, the small business owners that I talk to here in Lexington and Fayette and the surrounding counties, that's their number one issue, is finding qualified personnel to fill the roles, because the problem is that persistent. And it's not just the overdoses, it's affecting our lives. It's affecting Kentuckian lives right now. And the reasons that it affects each individual person that's affected by it has their own reason. So there is no single solution for it. We should be doing everything we can for it, because whether it's a group meetings or support programs or outpatient treatment centers, whatever is necessary, we need to make it available so that we can stem the tide of it. First, we need to start some kind of rescue plan to help the people that need help right now. And that plan includes everything: counseling, groups, meetings, programs. There is absolutely a role for the federal government in this. We can be funding clinics to do this. We can expand existing clinics and their services. And we should be doing this. We're failing our people, we're failing our citizens in not doing this. And then we need to work to cut it off at the source. Pill mills are obvious, and the pill makers know when they're dropping 1 million pills out of a single clinic, they know that there's something going on there. So we need that ATF bill that was signed a year or 2 years ago that really led to this, that really hindered the way these things are investigated. That was a terrible mistake. That needs to be repealed, and we need to be able to investigate these things, get into the manufacturers and the distributors of where these things are going and why they're going there.
I don't know that anybody would disagree with anything that you just said, but the one thing that comes out of all that is some of those things do not exist today.
That's right.
So how do you pay for them, I guess, is really the big question.
Well, that's how do you pay for anything?
Anything.
That's absolutely right. Government serves two purposes: collect money and spend money. No matter what, we're $22 trillion in debt, and people just need to come to the realization that taxes are going up. Taxes are going up. People with high incomes, the wealthy, $1 million or more a year, they have enjoyed 20 years of a tax rate that they've never known in American history. And whatever their strategy was for whatever political person that they supported, it worked. It worked very well for them. But it's not working for all of us. So we do need to raise, taxes in a way that these programs are funded. And I know we're not supposed to, as politicians, we're not supposed to talk about it, but our government is in place. Our government is us. Our government is here to govern us, and we willingly make sacrifices in our daily lives for the greater good of all of us. It's things like speed limits and seatbelts in our cars. It would be great if we could have no speed limits, but we just know that's not the reality because we need boundaries for ourselves. So our government puts these laws and regulations in place to make these boundaries. And we do this knowing it's for the greater good. Taxes and funding these programs where we help Kentuckians, we're going to do this because we don't want to see our fellow citizens suffer.
So you obviously, most of us see the lack of bipartisanship in Congress, and you have no Republicans vote for Affordable Care Act. You have one of the most inclusive and largest tax changes with no Democrats voting for that here just a few months ago. How do you get people to work together on that? What's your experience that's going to help you work across the aisle with somebody when it appears that sometimes leadership is really on top of congressmen and women not to play nice with the other side?
What it's going to come down to is votes. It's going to come down to the voice of the people. Congress is divided and not talking to each other because people are divided and not talking to each other. So in order to make sure that we are accurately representing the people, we need the people to be voting. And those margins of victory will determine the mandate that each congressman has. So if you only win a district 51-49, you have an obligation, a duty to represent 51-49. But if you win a district 58, 42 or something, that gives you a bit of a mandate to act on behalf of the victor. And in many of these elections, these past elections, a lot of these margins of victories have determined the mandate for how the politician is once they get into office.
Okay. I'm going to switch a gear on you again to talk about trade. Over the course of the last, as we tape this in late March, the president has introduced a pretty significant new trade policy and tariff plan with a lot of countries around the country. It's impacting. It's going to impact really just about everybody in America. What do you think about free trade and about the tariff plan that's put out there?
Well, trade is good. Trade is a founding principle of America. Open markets and access to markets. It also has the ability to promote peace and democracy and freedom. Trade is something that we should always be pursuing, and the more we have trade with a trading partner, the better it is for the world overall. It's better it is for Americans, better it is for jobs, for the economy. So trade is absolutely something we should do. Isolationism is not, not a thing for me. It's a big world, but it's getting smaller every day. I don't like the way the tariffs were rolled out. The purpose of the tariffs is to change the behavior of a trade partner. And to just shock a trade partner, to slap them in the face that way with a tariff that's so punishing, doesn't encourage trade in a way that we like. There's nothing wrong if having a target of 25%, but let's start it out at 2 or 3% and see if the behavior changes. See if the market opens up a little bit more, and if it doesn't, we can progressively make it more punishable. But once you jump up to 25%, you got nowhere else to go. What's next? 50%? And that's just an all-out trade war, and that does not serve the American people. There might be a few, steel or manufacturing jobs that are saved, a couple thousand. But in comparison, the larger market, the access to the larger market is shut off. And it's just too punishing to our people for it to be that way.
So if the trade or the tariff bill that's that's out there today is still in place in January of 2019, and you have the opportunity to take this seat, what would you advocate? How would you make changes to that?
What would I advocate? I would advocate lowering the percentage and see if the behavior changed. See if we're able to form the market that is much more equitable for both of the trading partners. It has to be an equal trade. It's not a winner and loser thing. It's trade. And it needs to adhere to much more that's in a way that's much more growth positive. But I couldn't support it in its current form.
I'm going to again go to a completely different topic and talk about national security. Every day, it seems like for the last year and a half, we've heard about North Korea and Russia and Iran. Just generally, what are your views on national security and on defense of the United States?
Well, first of all, it's really important. Other countries are a threat, but the biggest threat to America is America. We are large enough and more dynamic enough that we can weather these things. We can take on any other country or several countries at the same time and still be very proud of how we conduct ourselves. So our military has quantified our debt as being our single greatest national security threat. And $22 trillion, if the value of the dollar sinks, then our ability to purchase military hardware, our ability to conduct trade and influence other countries is diminished greatly. So it's the value of the dollar and the debt that we carry is our biggest threat. As it relates to other countries, Congress has a limited amount of influence over executive decisions in foreign relations. However, where was I going with this thought? My concern has been successive presidencies, starting with George W. Bush and then Barack Obama, and now again with Donald Trump. Each presidency has exercised a greater ability to conduct war unchecked by Congress. At first, the Congress had the War Authorization Act in 2002, I think it was, to fight terrorism. And we're still acting on that today in Syria or in Yemen. Sorry. And those weren't even considered at the time of the authorization. But what's troubling is that there's not even conversation taking place in Congress. This Congress is supposed to act as a check on executive power. It's a check on the executive branch. And it's not even occurring. And I'm not saying to just go out there and to force the president to not act in a certain way or not act on national security front. I'm just saying have the conversation. And that's not happening. And that's really troubling to me. I don't like the expansion of the executive powers unchecked by Congress.
We've got just a little bit of time left, and we want to thank you again for coming and visiting with us today. If you could just let us know why are you the best candidate for this seat in Congress?
Well, that's not up to me to decide. That's up to the voters to decide. I believe that I represent many voices that are not being heard. I'm not a career politician. I absolutely do not see myself pursuing an office beyond this. I want to make sure that people are being represented and the voices are being heard, and it becomes to a question of electability, of who's going to fight to have those voices heard. And I'm going to leave it up to the voters to decide.
All right. Well, thanks again for meeting with us today. This is Daniel Kemph. He's Democratic candidate for the 6th District of the U.S. House of Representatives. Thanks again for sitting with us today and talking about your views. Remember to get out and vote on Tuesday, May 22nd, and tune in to live election coverage right here on FPB TV on the night of May 22nd. Thanks again for tuning in. Have a good day.